Good evening. Welcome to the Carroll Chamber of Commerce Candidate Forum. My name is Shannon Landauer, the Executive Director of the Carroll Chamber of Commerce and Carroll Area Development Corporation. I am excited to bring this candidate forum to you this evening. I will be here with your moderator, Rick Hunsaker, and Rick is the Executive Director of the Region 12 Council of Governments located right here in Carroll. Joining us tonight is Hubert Hageman. He's our timekeeper and one of the members of our Carroll Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee. And we also are joined by Ashley Schabel, who is our staff member that has helped organize this event. And tonight we're pleased to bring you candidates that'll be on our ballot for Tuesday, November 3rd here in Carroll. They are uncontested County Board of Supervisors, District 1 candidate Scott Johnson, in District 3, Eugene Miners, and in District 5, Richard Ruggles. We will also hear from County Treasurer Lisa Wagner and our state representative for District 12, Brian Best, and in District 6 candidates Craig Williams and CJ Peterson. Our purpose here tonight is to help you get to know these candidates and to allow the candidates to tell you a little bit more about their views on present issues that are pertinent to our Carroll citizens. Our thanks to all of you candidates for joining us this evening, and we'll let them introduce themselves in opening statements in just a moment. The forum is being broadcast live tonight on Cat 6, Carroll's own local access cable channel, Mediacom Channel 6, and Western Iowa Networks Channel 46, and the Carroll Broadcasting radio station KIKD 106.7 FM. Also, you're able to tune into the forum on the City of Carroll's YouTube channel, and the Carroll Times-Herald will be covering tonight's event as well. The social media Facebook page for Carroll Chamber of Commerce also contains that live link. And again, to introduce our moderator, here's Rick Hunsaker.
Thank you, Shannon. We start tonight with candidates for county supervisor positions. We did draw earlier to see who would go first. Each of the candidates will have a maximum of 5 minutes to provide their statement. We'll start with County Board of Supervisors District 1 candidate Scott Johnson.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the Chamber for hosting this COVID era forum, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Scott Johnson, and I am running to fill the seat being vacated by Supervisor Neil Bach on the November 3rd ballot. I have lived in Carroll, Iowa my entire life and in Carroll County most of my adult life. In the late 1990s, I chose to relocate to Carroll when my West Des Moines-based company selected Carroll as a city to build an aerospace expansion plant. I continued my career in Carroll and retired as engineering manager 3 years ago. This has allowed me the time needed to dedicate to this very important board vacancy. Since becoming a resident of Carroll, I have served on a number of boards and committees, and I'm often the only resident right here at the Carroll City Council chambers, and I rarely miss the weekly Monday morning meetings for the supervisors. I'm excited for the opportunity to serve and work for the county that has become a vital part of my life. I'm intrigued by the decision-making process that supervisor role entails. I do not claim to be a subject matter expert. However, I do have the ability to listen, study, and understand all points of a given situation, then bring together an informed plan to keep this community strong for generations to come. I'm now at the point in my life where I do have the time needed to dedicate to this position, and I am excited and ready to become a board member. Again, thank you to the Chamber for hosting this virtual event.
Thank you, Scott. We will now hear from District 3 Supervisor candidate Eugene Miners.
Hi, I'm Eugene Miners, seeking re-election for District 3 Supervisor for Carroll County on November 3rd. First, I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this event and giving us an opportunity to speak here to you. And also to the citizens of Carroll County for giving me the opportunity to represent you as District 3 Supervisor. I have enjoyed representing you, the taxpayers. I have lived in Carroll County my entire life, was born and raised on a farm. I reside in Templeton since 1970, married 50 years this past April to my wife Diane, have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. My past careers include 36 years in agribusiness, 29 years between city clerk and mayor in Templeton, and my terms as supervisor. What I bring to the supervisor's board is my experience in government and ag and economic development. My record stands on its own merits. Carroll County has been a great place to live, and we need to encourage our youth and others to live here in Carroll County. And we need to continue to provide good jobs, safe environment, and good quality of life for all. The county needs to continue to be progressive in everything we do, from economic development, infrastructure, adding value to our products. We need to meet the challenges of the future, whatever they may be, sometimes unexpected as COVID-19. Funding these projects will always be a challenge. One option may be to work for continued and additional partnerships between county, private sectors, and other agencies. As in the past, I will vote for what is in the best interest of the taxpayers of Carroll County and not special interests. I thoroughly enjoy working on projects the county does, whether secondary road improvements, jail projects, the Essex radio system, budgets, etc., but also the committee work that one does that is often forgotten, such as youth detention services, CADC, New Opportunities, which currently is doing a project to provide early Head Start center base for 36 kids in Carroll, and the Iowa State Association of Counties as past board member and past president of the supervisor affiliate. I am Eugene Miners, and I would appreciate your support on November 3rd for District 3 Supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. And now our final candidate for a supervisor position for District 5 is Rich Ruggles.
Thanks, Rick. I especially want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this candidate forum. This is a very important part of our democracy. I am Rich Ruggles. My wife, Julie, and I have lived in Carroll County for 40 years. We have 2 children. I have a son, Brett, and his wife and 3 children live in Mount Air, Iowa. They are both teachers. I have a daughter, Alyssa. She's a registered nurse. Her husband and the 2 children live on a family farm near Gilmore City. We have found Carroll County a great place to raise our family and I have enjoyed being a county supervisor for the past 4 years. I was elected as a county supervisor in 2016. I appreciate the confidence you have in me. Some of the challenges our county faced when I was elected were a jail that was about ready to be closed. We had an emergency radio system that was not meeting standards, along with implementing a DOT licensing station. And most currently, the toughest challenge of all has been COVID-19 pandemic. I currently serve as chairman of the supervisors, along with serving on the following committees: Region 12, Board of Governments, Carroll County Waste Agency, Western Iowa Workforce Development, Ambulance Department. I also serve as an alternate on the East and West Nishnabotna Watershed, the North Raccoon Watershed, Carroll County Conservation Commission, and the Rolling Hills Mental Health Board. It's been very rewarding to watch Carroll become more proactive in public safety. Our goal at the county level, and especially mine at the board level, has been to keep taxation at a minimum while continuing to offering the best quality services we can. I've had the pleasure of working with both past board members and employees. The citizens of Carroll County should be proud of the quality of Carroll County employees. I am looking forward to not only working with our board, but I also with those employees to continue to provide excellent service that they provide.
Thank you, Rich. Now we'll transition into our, I was going to say next set of candidates, but our next candidate for an uncontested county office. So bear with us as we make this change. This is something that you'll see here in our effort to bring you a forum during COVID where we can safely have people distance and move about while still being able to have these candidates reach out to you as a community to let you know where their positions are. With each of these, and I'm sure this will be true with Lisa as well, but with each of the supervisor candidates, they are uncontested, but I know that they will care about issues that you care about. So do not hesitate to contact any of the three of them or all three of them to discuss issues important to you that may come before the Board of Supervisors. Are you ready? Yeah. Our next candidate to discuss her candidacy is County Treasurer Lisa Wagner.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank everyone for inviting me. It was a privilege and an honor to be here tonight. I don't know if a lot of people recognize me or not recognize me. I do have a twin, so if you see me somewhere and she doesn't say hi, it's the other one, but I'm Lisa Wagner. I grew up here in Carroll area in Egg Creek, north of Carroll. My parents were Darrell and Louise Grossman. They passed away when we were quite young, but they had great work ethics and strong religious backgrounds and everything for our family. So when I went off to college and came back, I knew Carroll was going to be my forever home. My husband and I just love Carroll County. I started working for the courthouse at the treasurer's office 28 years ago, August 15th. I've seen a lot of changes. I worked for 3 different treasurers. I found so many positive things about each one that I worked for. There is so many things that I learned from them that I feel makes me a great treasurer today. I think of all the things that they've taught me through the different transitions and how we handle things then and still do them now, but the main important thing that we do is customer service. Customer service is the main thing for me in my office. Like I said, I've done three different treasurers, 6 different title positions in 28 years. I think by doing these different positions, it makes me a strong treasurer because I know each spot that goes on in the office. Obviously, the newest one is the driver's license. I think the DOT is a wonderful thing for Carroll County. We wait on people from all over, though, not just Carroll County residents. And it's a privilege. It really is a privilege. One of the toughest things we've done because of the COVID is have to make appointments for driver's license. I know it's really hard for some people to understand that, but it's about the best thing we've ever done for our office because we don't have to have people waiting in the hallway for 25 minutes to an hour. They come in, they know when their appointment is, they get taken care of. We've also implemented a new financial and tax system while I've taken over through the years, and it's been wonderful also. I enjoy being in the office, but besides being in the office, I have a wonderful supporting family. My husband is John Wagner. He also works for a company, and oddly enough, he's been with his company for 28 years also. So we kind of must like our jobs. I have 4 children, Alex, Melissa, Madeline, and Simon. Our youngest Simon is a senior at Kemper. Besides being in the office a lot, I enjoy being with my family and going to activities, and I love being at all activities, whether we go to Kemper activities, Carroll High activities. You'll find us at Glidden games, Manning games, John and I. Well, actually, last night we went to a cross country for Panora. So we just enjoy being with the community. I'm going to finish up by just saying thank you again. And if you're in the office, say hi. I love to meet people, and I'm just thankful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Another transition, and we will transition to our candidates for the State House. And while they make their way up here to the podium, I will read to you the general rules that we have for the debate. All candidates have been notified of these rules. They will each have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Candidates must treat each other civilly and with respect, and personal attacks and endorsing other candidates will not be allowed. I don't think we'll have to worry about that here. The candidates who are called to answer a question from me will have 1 minute to respond. A candidate may elect not to respond to that question. I will have the option to ask a clarifying question, in which case the candidate on whom I call will have 30 seconds to respond. All candidates will have 1 minute for closing remarks. Strict adherence to the time schedule is necessary, so when 15 seconds remain, our timekeeper up here up front will hold up a red card and a bell will be rung at the end of your time. So those of you at home, if you hear that noise, that's what that means. We have selected order for opening and closing statements. And now that everyone is in place, we will start with the opening statements, and for that, we will go to Representative Brian Best, candidate for State District 12.
Thank you. My name is Brian Best, and I'll give you a little bit about my background. I was born in Carroll County, born at St. Anthony's Regional Hospital, and I lived on a farm south of Glidden until I graduated in 1978 from high school. I lived in Kansas City from 1984 to 89 and moved back to Glidden in 1990. I've worked for nationally owned medical equipment suppliers from 1990 through 2001 until my wife Sharon and I started our own company, Best Med Respiratory, in 2001. We started a sleep lab, Western Iowa Sleep, in 2006. The 12 years that I spent away from my rural Iowa gave me an appreciation for what I was missing. I missed walking down the street and knowing and seeing neighbors on a regular basis. Smaller schools where my kids would have a chance to join extracurricular activities the way I was able to, where your neighbors become your friends. In the Iowa House, I serve on the following committees: Appropriations, Commerce, Human Resources, and Transportation Chair. I was elected to the Iowa House in 2014 and began serving my term in 2015. I served as Economic Development Budget Chair from 2017 through 2019 and was appointed to the Transportation Chair this past year, 2020. As the Economic Development Chair, the Budget Chair, from 2017 to 2019, I've learned a lot about economic grants and how they help rural communities. I have been and will continue to be committed to helping rural Iowa. I was able to play a part in the governor's Future Ready Iowa bill that is helping Iowans to skill up and changes the conversation about post-secondary education. Community colleges play a very important role in skilling up Iowans. This is of great importance. It allows students to earn a good living with very little student debt.
Thank you, Representative. Our next opening statement will be made by State Senate candidate C.J. Peterson.
Thank you very much, Rick, for that, and thank you very much to the Chamber for hosting this forum tonight. And thank you all for tuning in on social media and online. So I decided to run for the Iowa Senate because I grew up in rural Iowa, about an hour from here in Atlantic, and my grandparents owned a small business. And when they went to retire, their business actually, there was no one to take over the business. They looked for a buyer. They weren't able to end up finding someone to succeed them. And so actually today that storefront still stands empty in Atlantic. And the more I think about it, the more I sat and thought about this, the more I wanted to do something about it. And part of the problem is we have a state government that does not prioritize rural communities like Carroll and like Storm Lake and all of the other towns that encompass this large district. And so that's why I've introduced what I'm calling the Homecomers Initiative. And so right now in Iowa, we have 14,000 entrepreneurs who are age 70 or older in Iowa. And that presents a problem because we know that a baby boomer actually reaches retirement age every minute right now. So it creates a big problem for our rural communities and also a great opportunity. So tonight I hope to talk to you a little bit about our plan for rural reinvestment and business succession plans that's actually built from a bipartisan breadth of information and proposals. That's what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. So we'll have a good time. And once again, thank you very much for tuning in. And that's it for my statement.
Thank you, CJ. And finally, for the opening statements, Senate candidate Craig Williams.
All right, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I want to thank the Carroll Chamber for putting this on, and Mr. Peterson for being here, Mr. Best, and all the candidates, and Mr. Hunsaker filling in for Chris Wallace tonight, which is I'm very grateful for. My name is Craig Williams. I'm from Manning, Iowa. I'm 56 years old, and I want to be your next state senator. My wife Cindy and I have been married for 35 years, and we're very blessed to have two wonderful children, both Kemper grads and Iowa State grads. Both are married and very successful people, and we've been blessed with three wonderful grandchildren in the last 2.5 years, with a fourth one coming here in about 4 or 5 weeks, right in time for the election, so I'm a winner no matter what. I'm from a family of hardworking people. My dad taught me the business end of a shovel when I was 12 years old, and I've been working ever since. I worked at a music store, a grocery store, radio station. I drove dump trucks and heavy equipment. operator. I was a Teamster back then. Went to Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. Graduated in 1984 with a degree in Operations Management and Information Systems. After college, I became a software developer. I wrote communication software systems and business applications. I was fluent in more than a dozen languages back then. But my wife and I wanted a better place to raise kids, so we packed up out of Illinois and moved to Manning, Iowa in 1991 to go to work for Gar Seed Company. From there, I became director of operations for Channel Bio and then general manager for a division of Dow AgriSciences. Today, I'm an independent consultant, independent businessman. I work with small companies to very large multinationals in agriculture. I've been involved in politics since I was 12, but I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman, I'm an ag man, I'm a family man. I'm proud to have the Farm Bureau Friends of Agriculture endorsement, the endorsement of the Iowa Association of Business and Industry, and the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association, among others. No one's ever accused me of not being a hard worker. It's that work ethic and that 30 years of experience that I want to take to the Senate for you. Tonight, I've got endorsements, but I want your endorsement, and I'm hoping that you will consider voting for Craig Williams for State Senate at this next election. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Craig. We'll go on to our first question, and I'm going to go first to Representative Best with this. Our state economic development programs and initiatives can sometimes have a pay-to-enter marketplace, which could include developing large sites, access to 4-lane roads, large marketing budgets, existing local incentive packages. To some, there's an appearance that our state's efforts, by looking at just the sheer subsidies that are given out, are focused on urban centers, with rural areas getting mostly lip service or small grants. Facing limited resources, although I see that the state had a big governor announced today that we have a big surplus, but generally facing limited resources, how should our state invest economic development funds, if at all, in our local area to help us remain economically strong?
I would be in favor of the state looking into setting aside different amounts of money for the rural areas besides just what goes to the cities. I think in some ways we have. I would argue that Future Ready Iowa in itself has tried to help rural Iowa. The different things that they're doing with the cable and the part of Iowa that needs that. They need computer services, they need fast internet, and there's something underway right now which would help that in that area. Something else that is being done is the Future Ready Iowa also helps with education of people that want to stay in their community, and it helps through the community college areas. If you're a person who lives in Carroll and you want to stay in this area,
Thank you, Brian. Craig, we'll go to you next. How should the state invest its economic development funds to help rural areas?
That's a great question. It's difficult for us here because Senate District 6, which we're running for here, goes from Buena Vista to Sac and Carroll and Audubon and 40% of Crawford County. There are 50 state senators, so one of us will have a 2% vote on this issue and every issue that comes up. Versus some of the state senators that come from the Des Moines area, where there's a bunch of them that are in that same local area. It's all divided up by population. So what it's going to take is some strong people to work their way into there and try to get our fair share out of it. I do believe that we need some economic development into the rural areas. This is a great place to live. This is why we moved here. It's because this is a fantastic place to raise children, and we want to keep it growing and keep people here. So we'll invest.
Thank you. CJ, you talked a little bit about this in your opening statement. How do you feel the state is best to invest its resources to help rural vitality?
Yes, so here's what's happening right now. So we have a situation in rural Iowa and rural America more broadly where there's one-party control of the legislature and the legislative seats. And part of the problem is, I mean, we have the, we may have the chairman of the State Transportation Committee, but Highway 141 is not getting fixed. And some of those things that happen because there's not enough initiative being taken in the legislature by the majority party right now to actually to move into those funds back to rural Iowa where it belongs. So when we're talking about the rural economic development piece, we really have to talk about business succession. And that's one of the most important things, because more than half of Iowa businesses and small businesses, especially grocers, don't expect to be open in 10 years because they don't have a plan for business succession and growth.
CJ, I'm going to stick with you for our next question. All three candidates have talked about the importance of agriculture and rural development. So much of the government's interaction with agriculture takes place at the federal level. What can be done at the state government level to boost Iowa agriculture?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So unlike Craig, I have not spent my life in agriculture. Unfortunately, I work in sales. But one of the things that we can do right now is actually invest in rural communities for farm-to-market initiatives and support our local grocers, because Iowa feeds the world. And so we should be really moving those resources into those rural communities. Now, we have a situation federally where we have two companies that actually control, or will soon control, about 3/4 of the seed market, and that's a monopoly. So a lot of those are federal issues. One of the things I proposed in my Homecomers initiative actually would protect Iowa farmers from the death tax, which actually, we can prevent farms from going on the auction block when a farmer passes away, and that's really important, especially in our rural communities where, the family farms can't survive.
Thank you. Craig, how do you feel the state can best help ag?
Yeah, I think as a state representative, our best ability is actually to work together with the federal government on initiatives for agriculture. Like I said, I was endorsed by the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association. I think renewable fuels are a boon for agriculture and this part of the state particularly. The same with energy. We can do an awful lot with energy here. And honestly, we produce a little too much. We need to find ways to produce efficiently, a little bit more efficiently. And I think, I work an awful lot with other companies and growers on how to do agriculture a little bit better. Just like I usually use an example of light bulbs. The incandescent light bulb wasn't very good, and we came up with this new fluorescent one, which I think was worse. And then we come up with this LED light bulb, which is so much better, that everybody adopted it very quickly. We've got some different things that we can do in agriculture that farmers will be very willing to adopt very readily if we can show them how to do it efficiently and cost effectively.
Thank you. Brian, how about you? What do you think can be done at the state government level the best to boost agriculture?
Well, we're doing some things right now that I think are very good. I'm sure we'll continue the biofuel help that we give the farmers. Basically, it's a rebate to convenience stores and to gas stations that use biofuels. I think we need to keep that going. That's very important. The federal government, I'm encouraged to see the federal government is maybe making some steps on ethanol and not allowing some of the petroleum companies out there to just get away or get by without blending, which they should be doing. So those are two areas. I think we need to invest in water quality. We need to help the farmers with this in that area. We've created a lot of mandates through federal government, and we do things now that were allowed before that they're not allowed now. So I believe we do need to look at all those three issues.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, we've heard a lot about the election integrity and some doubt that there may be problems with the election this cycle. Do you have faith locally that our county auditor, Courtney Earlbeck, and our Secretary of State will be able to oversee an honest election? Locally,
I've got no issues with it whatsoever. I have complete confidence in Courtney and her group of people. We've never had an issue here. My wife and I have been poll watchers for a couple of decades, and we've honestly never seen any particular issues at the polls. I know there are other parts of the country that I'm very concerned about it, but locally, I really am not. I do suggest that if you're going to vote by mail, request your ballot, fill it out, and then hand deliver it back to the courthouse to make sure that it gets in. Anything can happen between your house and the courthouse, and not saying it's anything nefarious at all. It's just I want my vote to count, and I'm going to bring it in and hand it in person.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, how do you feel about the integrity of our election?
You know, I have full faith in the state of Iowa. Secretary Pate has done a great thing by sending out absentee ballot requests to every registered voter in the state. And I have every faith in our county auditor. Look, voter fraud is an essentially non-existent problem. You only hear about that on one news station, and that's okay. But voting integrity and election integrity is really not really a huge issue. I don't really think it's going to be a problem, and I have faith that our elections locally and nationally both are going to be conducted fairly.
Representative, there was legislation that was considered and passed this last session of the legislature that you were a part of. How do you feel about the integrity of our election, both at the county level and the job our Secretary of State is doing?
I agree with Craig. We're doing a good job as a state. I do have full confidence in our local officials to do the right thing. Some of the things that we did, actually during the last day of session, was just minor things that were intended to make sure that when somebody did vote or requested a absentee ballot, that they are who they say they are. And that's really all that was done. I believe that the voter ID laws in the state of Iowa are sufficient and they're fine.
Thank you. Our next question, and I'll start with you, Brian, is on Medicaid. So I know that this is one that you know a lot about with your business. One of Carroll County's largest employers, New Hope, has expressed concerns about how Medicaid privatization, the move from the state-run Medicaid program to managed care, has negatively affected service to its clients with disabilities. Has Medicaid privatization been good for Iowa and good for people at New Hope specifically, as that organization has been among the more vocal critics?
I think it's a question that's being asked a lot. I do understand where there's people that are very upset with the way Medicaid is being run. In my business, I have problems too. One thing I would say is, as a state representative, and Craig will find out as a state, one of these two people here will find out as a state senator that it's an issue that sometimes we become the people who are having to go to bat for folks who are getting affected in a bad way from Medicaid. So yeah, there are some issues. There's some tweaks that need to be made. I think time will tell whether this has been successful or not, but I'm not going to say that it's been perfect by any means.
Thank you. Craig, how do you feel about Medicaid privatization?
So I think we kind of went from one bad problem to a different bad problem when we privatized it, and I don't know going back is going to resolve anything. I think we need to keep moving where we're at and correct the problems that we have. Talking specifically about, well, first I think the budget's $4.7 billion, so it's not inconsequential for the state of Iowa, the Medicaid budget. For New Hope Village in particular, I walk in there and I see people that I know need assistance through no fault of their own. They're in a predicament that they need care, and we need to help them with that. So I'm fully on board with that. I think there are other people that probably don't need it, that are absorbing some of those funds, that we need to take a better look at how those funds are being distributed. But I don't know that switching back is going to be a fix to it. I think we're just going to go back to a different problem again.
Thank you. CJ, has Medicaid privatization been good for Iowa?
Well, absolutely not, actually. And one of the problems is, when you move from and kind of like Craig said, Medicaid wasn't perfect under the previous management system, but then we moved all the way to this privatization model where actually we knew it wasn't going to work because they tried it in Kansas and it failed there. And then they brought it here, and what we see now is that Iowa Medicaid now has a 12% overhead when it was 5% overhead with the public model. So I think there is a mix of, there is room for public and private partnerships. There are things that need to be tweaked about the model that we had before. Of course, it wasn't perfect. And in my conversations with healthcare professionals and billing folks in hospitals, they're finding that under the privatization, it's taking so much longer to get the their actual funds paid and actually get the invoices in, and that's caused a real problem in delivery of care. So I would work toward establishing moving back to public model for Medicaid.
Thank you. And I'm going to stick with you, CJ, on this next question. And it's something, of course, it's on everybody's mind. None of us like to talk about, and that's the COVID pandemic and what's happened to the state. And certainly the governor picked a path for the state, and it's easy for us to play Monday morning quarterback. But thinking ahead into what the legislature may deal with and the variety of issues, what would you do in order to help the state recover more? What would you be doing differently right now if you were making policy?
Yeah, so I'm not going to play Monday morning quarterback. I know it's an extraordinarily tough position to be in, leading a state right now during the pandemic. But there are things that we can be doing better. We can actually be, instituting a mask mandate. That wearing masks for just 2 to 3 weeks can save tens of thousands of lives. And so that's one example where I think the governor has her priorities misplaced. And I want to trust everybody to do the right thing, but I think anybody who goes into Hy-Vee and Carroll knows that not everybody's doing the right thing. So it's one of those things where this should not be political. My grandparents are Trump supporters. My grandpa wears his mask. It has Trump 2020 on it. I vehemently disagree with him, but he wears a mask, and I think that's the most important thing we can do as a state is really get on one side on this issue of wearing masks. That's going to be the best thing we can do right now.
Thank you. Craig, how about your take on COVID? What should we be doing that we're not doing now as a state in order to react to it?
Well, first, I want to congratulate CJ's grandfather on a good choice. But as far as this, I agree, this is Monday morning quarterbacking on a lot of these issues. I feel for the governor. There are 3 million people, more than 3 million people in the state, and there's probably 3 million different ideas on what should be being done. There's more opinions than there are solutions. The problem that I have is we don't have a lot of information as regular citizens. I do believe the governor gets better information than we do. I couldn't tell you how many people in my hometown have COVID. I have no idea. I don't know how many of them are hospitalized or anything. Personally, I wear a mask about everywhere that I go. I don't have any problem with other people not wearing a mask. I think that's their personal decision. I'm not in favor of a mask mandate for the state. In stores, the stores have the right to require the mask mandate, as you did here as we were walking in the door here today. So I'm in favor of that. Don't think that we need a mask mandate, but I would appreciate people that do wear a mask in public.
Brian, how do you feel, or what should we be doing now that we're not doing to help the state recover from COVID or react to it?
I think I agree with what the governor's doing right now. I think she has a lot more information about what's going on than what I do as a state representative. I know that I believe the most important thing that we're doing now is we're keeping schools, we're allowing kids to go to school in this area, and I think that's very important because sometimes the cure can be worse than the actual disease was or is. And so you just got to do the best that you can, and I think she is. That there's no protocol for pandemics. This is the first pandemic that any of us have ever had in our lifetime lived through. So I think she's doing a good job, and there's really nothing that I could say that I would change.
Thank you. I'll stick with you, Brian. And this next question is on housing. Housing availability across all income levels is in shortage in most of Iowa and has been one, if not the number one issue identified for the workforce in the districts that you wish to represent. The market is unable to provide the needed housing with skyrocketing prices, things like the derecho impacting construction materials. We have limited contractors, and there's little, if any, profit for developers. Existing housing is deteriorating, depressing property values, threatening the future of many of our small towns. There are a lot of state programs out there to address this. Which of those state programs, and this I know may be, if you don't want to get into specific state programs, what do you think is working as far as approaches to helping housing, and what do we need to do to help housing in rural areas?
I think one thing that has been something the governor's been working on for the last couple of years, and it's finally started up, is the through the prison system in Iowa, building modular homes and shipping them out to communities. It gives the local community an opportunity to put a house up that's going to help somebody that's in a situation where they don't have a ton of money. We have to do what we can to give people ownership. I think we all realize that. Anything that can be done through the state to reward and help people in the rural areas is very important, because they don't necessarily have these problems in Des Moines or in the big urban areas. This is kind of more of a local rural issue. And anything that can be done through the IEDA, which is the Economic Development Authority, I know they're looking for new things to do, and I agree with all that. So,
Thank you. CJ, I'm going to go to you next. Housing has been a big issue. Shannon can tell you that CADC has been looking at it. City of Carroll has been looking at it. All the cities and counties deal with this. What do you think the state can do to help the critical housing situation in our small communities?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Rick. And I'm probably the only person up here who's bought a house in the last year. If you're thinking about moving in the middle of a pandemic, my answer to you is don't do it. So that was a bit of a process. So now what I will say is we did struggle to find housing that was suitable to our needs. And we wanted to stay right here in rural Iowa, specifically Carroll County. And, we did luck out and find a house in Templeton. But, part of the problem is I think one of the things that needs to happen is folks like me and folks who want to come here and raise a family need to have access to the information they need. And, a quick Google search, I'm a millennial, I'm used to being able to find things online. And I think the communication piece is going to be so important. And, we were lucky to be able to qualify for a first-time homebuyers grant, and that was helpful. But I think we need to bring that into any kind of policy piece that we're doing.
Craig, housing is talked about everywhere, and it's home ownership, it's rehabilitation, it's demolition of blighted properties. What is it that the state can do to help rural communities respond?
Yeah, it is a great question. I don't know that I have got a great answer. I own a few rental properties myself, and there's plenty of properties for sale or for rent in the area that I live in. I'm not seeing the problem locally, but I'm sure that the problem is in other areas that I just don't have that visibility to. So I don't want to dodge the question at all. I just don't have enough information to answer you, and I just assume make sure that I become educated on the situation before I get too mouthy about it. How's that?
Good enough.
Okay.
I'm going to go to you for the next question. Not that this is a hot button issue at all, but I want to talk about abortion. Mm-hmm. And that's because, as we know, we do have a Supreme Court seat that's up that may give states more of the ability to regulate abortion, which means it's going to come in front of the legislature. So in previous years, this would be kind of a moot question for some of you because it's decided law at the Supreme Court. It may not be so much anymore. Mm-hmm. So, Craig, I understand you're pro-life. Mm-hmm. What penalties, if abortion is restricted, what penalties do you think there should be for the woman that would have the abortion or the doctor that would perform it?
Yeah, that's got to be from Mr. Burns. I've heard him ask that question before. And I don't know that I've got a great answer for that one either. I'll tell you that I personally believe that life begins at conception. And I can understand how intelligent people can debate a little bit on when life actually begins. I don't know how you can debate that life doesn't begin at least at the heartbeat. And life is precious. If we're going to err on something, we should err on the side of life. That's my opinion. We have an issue in the state of Iowa that we did have one of the most pro-life laws in the land until the Iowa Supreme Court overturned it and found something in the Constitution that's not there. So what we're going to end up having to do, there is an amendment to the Constitution on the table, not to define when life begins, but to basically say that there is no constitutional right to an abortion in the Iowa Constitution. I would support that.
Thank you. CJ, as I understand it, you are pro-choice. Are there any situations in which you think abortion should be prohibited?
Yeah, so I really take issue with the idea of, being pro-choice or pro-life. I think all of us up here are pro-life. As a person of faith, I believe that life begins at conception, but as a person with the brain, I know that life doesn't end at birth either. So I think it's important to make sure that we are, providing access to family planning services, which actually were curtailed by the state of Iowa. And actually caused a 25% increase in the number of abortions performed in Iowa in 2019, which is very, very frustrating for someone like me who wants to reduce the number of abortions. And to answer your question, I think that decision is best left to a woman and her doctor. I personally am opposed to abortion. I would not have one, I don't believe, if I was a woman, but I'm not in that position to make that decision.
Thank you. Brian, how about you? And of course, you have been asked this question, I know, before, but if there are instances where abortion would become illegal in Iowa, what do you believe the penalty should be for the woman that would have it or the doctor that would perform it, if any?
I honestly don't know how to answer that question. The only thing that I've really dwelled on is the fact that that baby in the womb is a living human being. For me to say that the penalty should be really severe is hard. It's hard for me to know that. I just know what's in my heart, how I feel, and I do believe that that part of being a legislator is having to deal with your moral core and how you were brought up, what you believe in, and I do believe that abortion is wrong, and there's a difference between that and just saying that at conception it's over, you cannot have an abortion, period. I do believe that we have to look at the woman's side of things too, and it's a very tough situation. That's all I can say about it.
Thank you. And it is a hard issue to discuss for all of the reasons that you have mentioned. One thing, and this is not a question that I had planned to ask, but it's when CJ talks about, life doesn't begin at birth as far as being pro-life, that made me wonder if we do have a situation where we see a decrease in abortions because of maybe a state law or whatever, and that increases the number of births we have, what type of programming might you support to make sure that we have healthy kids and that women are taken care of and mental health issues and all of that? Is there anything that you feel that we could do to facilitate any change in abortion law? Yes, Brian, you first.
Well, one thing that we should really be doing proactively is seeking out people that want to be parents to kids, and there's a lot of them out there that would be more than happy to adopt, and having a very organized system where that somebody who's carrying a child that they don't think that they would be able to take care of, to give them the opportunity to meet up, and for those parents or those parents that want to be parents that were not parents, for them to be able to adopt those children. And so that's one thing we can do. I do have a question, and I don't want to flow too far off of this, but I'm curious to understand from CJ what you meant by, you said that the abortions have increased by 25%. And I'm just asking the question. I'm not judging. I just want to know.
Yeah. So that's actually it's the statistics from the Iowa Department of Public Health. So the number of abortions increased from 2018 to 2019 in the state of Iowa. So.
Are you done, Brian? I just don't want to take away your time.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Next, I'll go with that question to CJ about any sort of other, if there would be a change, even if I guess there isn't a change in abortion law, but if there would be one, are there any support systems or public assistance programs that you feel that we should implement to go along with that?
Well, a lot of the public assistance programs that would be necessary are already in place. I mean, we have SNAP programs for nutritional assistance. We have the early childhood education initiatives and things of that nature. So part of the one of the things that really comes to mind here is, my mom had 2 kids. She says were, the greatest gifts that God ever gave her, but she had a endometriosis and had to have a hysterectomy right after my brother was born. She always wanted a baby girl, never got that chance, and she never made enough money to actually be able to qualify for adoption by state standards, and that's one of the reasons we need to increase the minimum wage in Iowa. Whether we go to all the way to $15 like some other states have, or 12, or anything along the line, but we have to be doing more for working families in order to have that pool of families to be ready to adopt those children should the need arise.
Thank you. And Craig, to you, we've heard that maybe there needs to be some better state programming to assist in adoption. Heard maybe that there are support programs already out there for people. Anything else that you think needs to be done in order to support people who choose to have children?
Yeah, so I have to totally agree with everything I just heard, because it's too difficult to adopt a child everywhere, anywhere. I know people that have gone to other countries because it's easier to adopt a child in another country than it is to adopt one here, and it's unfathomable to me that if a child isn't wanted by their parent, that there's probably a bunch of other people there that would love them. We were fortunate; we had a son and a daughter, and we're going on boy number 4, our grandkids. And we would love to have a granddaughter. If we can't have one, we might go looking for one another way. So as far as programs are concerned, we've got programs on top of programs on top of programs, and it's very difficult to figure out how many programs there already are in place to do these kind of things. But the program that you can't legislate is personal responsibility. And people just, we talked about masks earlier. It's personal responsibility. You need to understand. We know how these kids, how people become pregnant now. You can't avoid it. So, but we're not going to legislate it.
Thank you. The next question I have is about bipartisanship. And, certainly everybody is tired of all the partisan bickering, and why can't we get together, though we do like to relish in our own partisan bickering. In our elected representatives, though, we want them to do the best job. How do we know what is your ability to work with members of the other party? Should you be elected, Craig, how will you work with the Democrats in order to further policies and benefit the state?
Well, I've never found anybody that I couldn't work with. I've been in business for an awful long time and deal with people at every end of the spectrum. One of my closest allies was a staunch Democrat, and we would have just some wonderful arguments and then go right back to work again. So we can argue and disagree, but the thing that's really disgusting anymore, the antisocial networking is just beyond me. The things people say online to each other, and it's not just the bickering, it's the awful language that's used. And you can't legislate that either, but we do need to get a little bit more decorum about us, I think. I don't have a problem working with anybody on any subject. I won't tolerate people calling me a racist or a bigot or a homophobe or anything like that. But we'll work together on finding a common solution.
Thank you. CJ, certainly we've had a lot of stasis at the federal level that people aren't very happy with, and we don't expect that out of state government. As a Democrat, how would you work with, and there's a possibility, we don't know if either of the two houses will flip in Iowa. I think there's a possibility that the Senate might do that. So you might be in the majority, but how would you then work with a Republican governor? How would you work with a Republican House?
Yeah, so actually it'll be the House that flips, if anything, most likely. I think there's
right.
a 51-47 majority on that side for the Republicans. But, as a Democrat, when I get to Des Moines, I'm immediately going to have divided government, whether, I like it or not, because the governor happens to be a member of the opposite party. So, in order to get any legislation moved through the Iowa Senate, I'll have to work with Democrats and work with Republicans. And, one of the things that I think is really important is having rural Democrats in the legislature again. It used to be, we had Berkeley Bedell, and, Tom Harkin is from this part of the state. And you could have Democrats and Republicans sit down and work together. I was actually born after Reagan was not president anymore, but I know that he used to have beers with Tip O'Neill in Washington. I think we can get back to some of that. Maybe for me it'll be a coffee, but we can all sit down and have a good chat and work together, because really what it's all about is working for the people of our districts.
Brian, you've got experience down at the legislature with working across the aisle. Can you give us an example of a time when you worked with somebody from the other side of the aisle to get something done?
Yeah, I can. In fact, this past 2 sessions, I've worked very hard on a pharmacy bill that basically would affect pharmacy benefit managers, also known as PBMs, who are kind of gutting the industry right now. And I've worked a lot with John Forbes, who's a Democrat from Des Moines, who actually owns a pharmacy himself. So we work together on this. I've taken a lot of advice from John. I trust him. I trust him with my life. He's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. We get along great. What most people don't realize, or they may not realize, is that probably over 90% of the bills that we pass down at the State House are bipartisan. Everybody hears about the ones that make the headlines. When we're fighting over pro-life issues, abortion rights, things like that, those get heated. But most of the time, everybody down there wants to do the right thing for their district and for their state. And so we have a lot more in common than people realize.
I'll stick with you, Brian. Certainly you have some experience, of course, being down at the State House, and people make campaign promises all the time, but if you had an issue that you really felt was your priority this next session that you really wanted to work on, what's your main issue that you want to give your attention to?
The situation I talked to earlier about pharmacy benefit managers, I think that is very important to pharmacists and to the state of Iowa, because those are issues that affect downtown businesses. Almost every business or every town in the state of Iowa of any decent size has pharmacies. And so that's one that I really think we have to take a look at. The pharmacy benefit manager, one specifically is CVS Pharmacy. They own their own insurance company, they own their own pharmacy, and they're also a pharmacy benefit manager. How is that fair to a local pharmacist? It's not. They get most of the time. And so that is going to savage rural Iowa. It's going to savage everybody who is not a member of the three big pharmacies. And so that's one area. That's probably the primary thing. Obviously, there's transportation issues that I want to work on, but I don't think I have time to talk about that right now. I see the red flag coming up.
CJ, your hallmark #1 issue that you would like to work on at the legislature?
Yeah, so actually, I think business succession and entrepreneurship really has to be at the front and center of any chance we have at revitalizing rural Iowa. So I would say we really need to focus on those bread and butter issues. I mean, we need people my age and younger to be coming back here. And my friends didn't move to Denver and Chicago and Des Moines because they wanted to be closer to a mall, right? So they moved out there because they don't think that there's any opportunity for them here. And so that's why I'd like to take 15% of the money that we're currently spending as a state attracting out-of-state business and reinvest that in rural communities and local talent. So and I'll also support the it was like he's about to raise the red flag. So it got me too, Brian. So yeah, that's what I would focus on.
Okay. Craig, what's going to be your #1 issue?
Well, first you got to get on a committee assignment, right? And so agriculture is my heart and soul. I would love to be on the ag committee. The government committee would be great. Transportation committee would be fantastic. I'm a pro-business guy and pro-kids, so I'm not sure which one of those are my biggest pet projects. Probably if I had to choose one thing that I really would like to push for is something with internet access. I mean, we really need rural internet access because everybody can work from home these days if you have access to the internet. Now, is that government paid for and whatever internet? I don't know, but I think we can open up some doors to like cooperative internet access. We've got cooperative electric, we've got co-op rural water. Why don't we have cooperative internet access as well? So that would be something I would like to work on.
Really, I should give more time for this next question that I want to ask because there are so many issues balled up in it. But we would be remiss if we didn't talk about education. And there are a lot of things to talk about, really, with schools dealing right now with are they a hybrid model? Are kids going to be at home? They have personnel issues. You've got the Regents institutions that have, are bleeding money at the moment, just sports programs that haven't gone on. And then we talk about community colleges with their ability to retrain our workers and to make our workforce stronger. I'm going to start with you, Craig, just so that you can get ready when I eventually get to my question. But what is it in education that you feel is going to take up a lot of space that you'll work on while you're in the legislature? What's important to you among either K-12, Regents, community college?
Wow, great questions, and loaded too. So we spend about, I think, 54% of the state budget on education today, something like that. And that's quite a bit of money. It wasn't that long ago that we were the #1 education state in the nation, and we're not that anymore. That concerns the heck out of me. I think we could get there again. I don't know all the details behind why we're not there and what we need to change, but something went wrong along the way, and I think we need to get back to that. As far as I'm a big fan of the community colleges. When my daughter was at Kemper, she took full advantage of cross classes with DMAC. So by the time she got out of high school, she had a full year of college already under her belt, which I thought was fantastic. I'm a big fan of the community colleges. The Regents, I know that they're bleeding money because of the sports, but they also have quite a huge bank account as well that they haven't tapped into. So I'm not going to feel terrible for them just yet. I do have nieces and nephews in college, and they're paying quite a bit of money to go there. So hopefully they're going to get a good education.
Thank you. CJ, the packed, loaded question with education. What do you feel should deserve your most attention?
Yeah, so I'm actually proud to be endorsed by the Iowa State Education Association, which actually, and in my conversation with educators across the state and in our district here, one of the things that constantly gets brought up is the idea of the need for better psychology and psychiatry support in our schools. And much like we ask we ask way too much of our public employees, whether they're police or they're teachers. They're not psychiatrists, and yet they're dealing with psychiatric issues all the time. So I think that's a very important piece of that in our public schools. When it comes to our Regents institutions, we can't forget that we have the Iowa School for the Deaf and the Iowa School for the Blind included there. And that's why I'd like to, one issue that's really near and dear to my heart with my brother being deaf, is I'd like to work on language acquisition for young deaf children. I think that's actually something that got bottled up this last session, but we'll hopefully work on it next year.
Thank you. Brian, your thoughts on education and priorities in that arena?
Over the years I've been in there, I think the thing that has really that I've become more aware of is what a great service community colleges do for the state of Iowa. They are the least expensive per student of anything that we have. They're much less expensive than the Regents universities by far. And so the question becomes, why can they do it on the budget that they have? And the Regents are always seemingly coming up short and needing more money, especially when the University of Iowa has $1 billion in endowments, and then also sold they sold their power plant for over $1 billion also. So they're coming to us and saying, hey, we just got to have $30 million, and I'm glad to do it if we can. But I do believe that we have to take what's winning, and that to me is K through 12 and community colleges working together so these students graduate from high school with some college credits already. So that's where I'm at on that.
Thank you. And I'm going to stick with you. CJ brought up this issue on minimum wage. Do you feel the minimum wage in Iowa should be raised? And if so, to what level?
I think that that's something that we could look at. It'd have to be factored in at a very conservative amount. The problem you have is if you go to $15 an hour tomorrow or next year, how about the places that are employing people at, say, $13 an hour? You've raised it to 15. This $13 an hour person may have been working there for 5 years. Okay, so now the minimum wage is 15. somebody brand new comes in at 15 and that $13 an hour person is want to go to 18 or 19 or 20, it puts a lot of upward pressure on businesses. And so for that reason, I do believe that we have to be very conservative on it. I'm not real sure that anybody in Carroll County is making $7.50 an hour. I don't know what the prevailing wage is, but I see $10 an hour at most places that I go as the low. And so I'm really not in favor of it, but I would be willing to look at it in a very conservative nature, bringing it up slowly every year.
CJ, you brought this issue up. Can you expound a little bit more on your thoughts on minimum wage?
Yeah, so one of the things that the state of Iowa needs to do to remain competitive and attract a good workforce is have a decent wage for our workers. And every state surrounding Iowa has a higher minimum wage than we do. Nebraska being the lowest at $9 an hour. And so I think it's very important that we we don't package this as something that is complicated or difficult. Now I understand that business owners will have to grapple with the idea of raising the minimum wage. Again, like Brian said, I think most of the businesses in Carroll County are already paying higher than the current minimum wage. But of course, any minimum wage increase we do over a period of years. One thing we can do at the state level immediately is remove the preemption clause that would allow counties and cities to implement a higher minimum wage if they so choose. And I think local control is always a good thing.
Thank you. Craig?
Yeah, I'm not in favor. I think pre-COVID we saw market dynamics at their best when we had very low unemployment and employers had to compete with each other to try to get employees to come in. I know that there's some hog farmers just south of here that were paying $15 an hour in full benefits for entry-level position. Couldn't get anybody to come to work with them. And it's like that in a lot of places. So if we have low unemployment, the economy is booming, that wage will naturally rise up, and the minimum wage is not going to be an issue. I'm also afraid that we're just coming out of this COVID thing. Hopefully, we're coming out of it. And a lot of businesses have been shut down for months or been told that you can only have 10% or 15 or 20% capacity. And now you're going to open up and double their prevailing wage. I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Let's talk about the environment and how the state, and I'm going to go to you first, Craig. How should, or what should the state, if anything, be doing to better protect our natural resources?
Well, number one is good monitoring. And unfortunately, we had the situation with the Des Moines Waterworks a few years ago. I don't want to bring up that old wound again, but a few acres of land north of us caused an issue down in Des Moines, and I think we can address those issues without multi-million-dollar lawsuits. I think we can monitor and go talk to the farmers and give them better ways or show them better ways to be able to manage that so that they don't have that runoff. I don't know too many farmers that are purposely putting nitrogen down on the ground just so that it'll run out into the stream, but there are some natural things that happen there. So that's probably, obviously, I'm kind of leaning towards the agriculture side of this because that's near and dear to me. Other things that they can do, I really don't like the pop can fees, but I think we're probably going to have to raise that. I do like the fact that people will go to the side of the road and pick them up. I like clean highways.
CJ, how can the state better protect the environment, or should we be doing something we're not doing now?
Yeah, so Iowa's waterways, at different points of the year, are actually some of the most polluted in the country, and that's really it's really no wonder when we have two major ag companies that are controlling 74% of the seed market, and so when all these when we come in with this one type of crop and we have to use a certain type of fertilizer, a certain type of pesticide on those crops, we do have to make sure that we're managing the waterways and managing the runoff. And I think most farmers do a good job of that, and I don't think that we need to be punitive with farmers or anything to that nature. But I really think it's important for us to take into account the environmental impact of what we're doing. That's why I do support, some form of regenerative agriculture, like they've been doing in Nebraska, which actually, returns to crop rotation in some places. So, of course, my mom always tell you, if you ever walked beans as a kid, you sure appreciate those pesticides now. But
Brian, how do you feel the state, or should the state be doing anything better in protecting the environment?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on and have been going on for the last couple of years to try to get more dollars put into the education for farmers and trying to get less nitrogen to go into the streams. As Craig said, measuring the amount of nitrogen is very important at the point of outlet, and in those types of things, just being proactive, finding out where your hot spots are for nitrogen and trying to lessen those. That's very important. One thing I wasn't even thinking about, and I'll give Craig credit, on the bottle bill, and that's something that I've been fighting for the last couple of years. We have a redemption center here in town that is getting that 1 cent is just not getting them there. They're getting more and more cans and bottles than what they can even handle because the surrounding counties are no longer redeeming, and so that's something that we need to look at also on top of that.
The next question, I'm going to go to you first, CJ, is on childcare. There has been, I can't cite the study, I have seen lots of reports of the shortages in childcare. I know that I've had employees that have talked about the shortages in childcare. We have communities that are looking at building childcare centers. What can the state do to make childcare more available?
yeah, so this is one of the areas where I think my Republican friends and I will agree. I think we need to work on seeing whatever we can do to relax some of the regulations on licensing new child care providers. Oftentimes, we had we would go to a babysitter across the street. That babysitter could have handled 4 kids instead of just 1 or 2. We need to take down some of those barriers for starting in-home daycares and the like. Childcare is too expensive. One of the reasons Luke and I talk, we talk all the time about adopting kids, and that's one of the things we always talk about because my future brother-in-law and his wife, they're expecting their 2nd child, and $600 a week is that's a lot. I mean, it's not something that most families can afford, and so I don't think that's it's a problem we can't really afford not to work on. And I don't have all the specifics, but it's one of the major priorities that I'll take under when I'm in the Iowa Senate.
Thank you. Craig?
Yeah, well, CJ, you're right. We do agree on this. I don't know how we got here where we went around telling people, oh, no, you can't watch kids anymore. And oh, wait, now we have a child care crisis, and the state has to step in and fix that. It never harmed us when we were kids to go sit at the neighbor's house, and you're right, they could watch 2 or 4 kids. We need to relax some of those regulations. Now, I love kids, and I don't want to see them put in a bad situation. I don't want to see them with some pedophile, but we're getting that with licensed daycare centers as well. So I think we need to relax some regulations and maybe do help some people with pooling their resources together. You got 5 families there, and one can watch the kids for a week, and the other one can watch the kids for a week, something of that nature. We don't even need the state to be involved in that. But it is something that I think the state can look at and relax some of those regulations and maybe cure at least a part of the problem.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, over the last few years, we worked on that. We've talked about it a lot. One thing we have done is we've raised the tax credit for the amount of money that you make. You can still go to a higher wage increase and not have what they used to call the cliff effect. And the cliff effect is a bad thing because what it does is it says once you reach a certain dollar amount in income, based on how many kids you have, you fall off the cliff. You get no help from the state. And so all of a sudden, you are forced not to take a raise. You're forced to say to your employer, hey, I need to go down to 32 hours because if I stay at 40, I'm not going to get any help. It's going to be a net loss. And so those kinds of things should never happen. And we're working very hard to get that fixed. Something else that's being done is some public-private partnerships where businesses that employ a lot of people are getting some incentives to put daycare in their facility, which I think is a great idea. We just have to use our imagination. City of Glidden and Glidden Ralston School is working really hard to get a daycare put into the school there. Sorry, Hubert, I'm done.
Brian, I'm going to stick with you on transportation. I'll just hit this ball right down the middle for you, knowing that you've got some experience with this. But of course, the state did do some things to raise some revenue in past years. But there is an interest in this community, in this county, and across the west central part of the state having a 4-lane Highway 30, and that's going to take additional transportation resources. Do you see, or what do you feel you can do in order to help make Highway 30 a reality?
Well, just as a caveat, before we start this conversation, Highway 20, which was proposed, it became an idea, I believe, about 60 years ago. And I'm not exactly sure when the actual digging started to go to a 4-lane, but it takes years and years and years and dollars and dollars and dollars. And the problem we have right now, I believe, is that a 4-lane that would be comparable to what US 20 did would take out a ton of farmland, and it would cost, I don't know, they used to say $1 million a mile. I think now we're probably looking at $1 million for a quarter mile. So we have to do it in a smart way. I'm all for doing that, but I think we have to use the roads that we have and not veer off 2 miles in a parallel and make Highway 30 a county blacktop. I think there would have to be some way of doing it, just from the sheer money standpoint of this. I'd love to see Highway 30 4-laned. We need that in rural Iowa because it is important.
Thank you. Craig, I'm going to go to you next. And this is transportation investment, obviously important across the board for businesses and not only logistics of moving people, but competing in economic development. Highway 30 being part of that. What would you do in the legislature?
Yeah, so I agree with Brian here. I mean, I think it would be great to have a 4-lane, if at least a 3-lane Highway 30, where you can have, you know, interchangeable 2 lanes where people can actually pass each other. It's sometimes quite a dangerous road to drive down, and you got some slow-moving vehicles, and we've had some pretty major accidents on there. So I would love to see it, but you got to look at that. $1 million per quarter mile is probably pretty accurate. You know, if you need to do that for 100 miles, you're talking about $400 million out of the budget, and you know, that's a big hit for a one-time deal. So it's going to have to be done over a period of years. I would sure like to see them at least acquiring the property a little at a time so that we can do it in the future rather than waiting until, you know, 40 years from now and then saying, oh, wait, now we can't do it because it's too expensive again.
CJ, your transportation priorities.
Yeah, so as far as the Highway 30 project, I tend to agree. It's an extraordinarily expensive project, and it's not one that anybody's going to be able to do easily. It'll probably be taking place over several sessions of the legislature. I think did you say 60 years for Highway 20? Gosh, that's a long time. But yeah, that's one of the things longer term we can work on. One of the things we really need to make sure we're doing, though, is make sure that when the legislature, passes a transportation bill, that we're not sending unfunded mandates back to our counties for the county roads as well. There was a bill that was pushed by the logging industry. I think it was last 2 sessions ago that forced counties to buy logging signs, and a lot of these counties out here don't even have logging trucks to go through. But here's the kicker: they had to pay for them too. So here's this gift, and here's the bill. So that's one of the things that we really need to focus on, is making sure that rural communities are not left behind. And I have faith that all 3 of us would do that.
My next question is about business assistance. We saw with COVID, a lot of our small businesses were challenged, and we saw federal programs to help them, state programs to help them, local programs to help businesses. Is there anything else that needs to be done to ensure the vitality, particularly of our small businesses on Main Street? And what would you do to help them out during the next session?
Is that question for me? Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. You first,
No,
CJ.
you're fine. I thought we were making eye contact, but I wasn't sure. So, and actually, this was just on the front page of the Carroll paper today. CADC, open to any ideas regarding, filling the downtown area and it focused on the closure of JCPenney. And, I think a lot of those, items are extraordinarily important because, we need to make sure that we're preparing businesses not just for, to deal with the COVID-19 crisis. I think that our local communities and our state and federal government, it doesn't look like the federal government's going to do anything before January or maybe after that if they can ever get their act together. But I think, when we get to, the session in January, we can take a look at that. I know some of the local option sales tax funding has gone toward local businesses here, and I think that's all been appropriate. So as of right now, I think we wait and see on COVID, but we really got to work on business succession so that we know what happens after we get past this pandemic.
Craig, how do we continue to help small businesses and make sure that Main Street survives?
Yeah, hopefully this thing is coming to an end. Who would have thought, right? I mean, I think we're in the 6th month of a 2-week setback, right? And I don't know how much longer it will last. So I don't think I've got any incredible ideas at this point for how we do it. We're going to end up having to do something, but I do commend a couple things. One is that the state has kept a rainy day fund for some time, and despite a lot of pressure to get them to spend it when we didn't need to spend it, we need it now. I don't think anybody's going to disagree. It's raining. It's droughty here, but it's raining, and fortunately we've got that money to rely on. If you were Illinois, you wouldn't have a nickel to fall back on. So I'm open to ideas. I would sure love to talk to anybody in business about what their thoughts are. There's only going to be so much money to go around, and we can't spend it all in one place. And I think there's going to be a long line of people looking for cash. So,
Thank you. Brian, what can we do to help Main Street?
Well, I agree with all the things we have been doing. I think the governor did a good job in setting up, through Iowa Economic Development, different ways that small businesses could ask the state for help, and I think that that's been fairly successful. I think there are some businesses that may not ever recover from this, and I'm sad about that. One thing that we can do as a community, we don't need the government to tell us this, is buy local. And so when you see, and I have friends that do this, that they're very happy about what kind of deal they got on Amazon. Amazon isn't going to pay our bills for us locally. They're not going to pay property taxes. So it's obvious that they can do it at a lesser cost. But I think just to be good citizens and to keep the businesses that we have in Carroll, shop in Carroll, shop in Glidden, shop in Audubon, Manning, all these cities, we need to keep those businesses on Main Street. And to do that, you can't order things from Los Angeles, California and send it into Carroll. It's not going to work.
Thank you. I've got a list here, and we're getting close to the end of our time, but this I would just like a quick answer, which I know politicians hate, but I'm going to do that to you anyway. I've got a list of different issues, and I would just like you to pick out the one of this list, and I think I'm just going to go in order. I'll go Brian, Craig, CJ. The one of this list that is the most important to you when you're in office. Decreasing taxes, preserving and expanding Second Amendment rights, abortion policy, rural economic vitality, increasing the minimum wage, protecting the environment. Which thing, Brian?
Rural economic vitality. We got to keep our cities, we got to keep our schools, and without that, we do not exist as a rural entity.
Craig?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Brian on this. I mean, decreasing taxes is important to me. Second Amendment rights are important to me. Abortion rights are important to me. And rural economic development. If you don't have a good economy and a good place for people to live, the rest of it doesn't matter.
CJ?
We got a trifecta up here. I think rural economic development is going to be very important. That's why anyone who hasn't fallen asleep tonight yet watching this forum should go to cjforiowa.com, take a look at my Homecomers initiative.
Thank you. And now we'll move to our closing statements. So you can all wipe your brow. All the hard questions are over. And we have predetermined this. I'll first go to Craig Williams.
All right, very good. We got 1 minute?
1 minute.
Now 50 seconds, right? Well, thank you very much for everybody taking the time. If you haven't fallen asleep, go to williamsforiowa.com and you can look up more on my policies and positions. I've been in business in agriculture and industry for a long time. I've got an awful lot of experience, and I know quite a few people in Des Moines that I can work with, and I can work on both sides of the aisle. I would sure appreciate your vote coming up in this election, and I would love to go to the state senate and fight for this for SD6. That's Buena Vista, Sac, Carroll, Audubon, and Eastern Crawford County. It's a big territory with a lot of demands, and it's going to take some strong people with a good experience to go head to head with some of the city folks in Des Moines. Appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. CJ, your closing remarks.
Yeah, so I want to thank the chamber and you, Rick, for hosting the forum tonight. So I came back to rural Iowa because I met somebody and fell in love with somebody who lived here that did not want to move to a big city. And at the time, I couldn't figure out, like why would I want to come back out to a small town? And by coming back here, really was able to rediscover my roots and find those values again. Faith, family, and community. Worship leader at my church now. It's been an extraordinary experience, and I think one of the things that you learn most about when you're running for office is you learn about yourself. And I realized that we all have a lot more in common than we think. A lot of times we get tied up on this social media stuff, and when I go to the Iowa Senate, I'll be a voice for all of you, not just for the people who agree with me. So go to cjforiowa.com, check out what I've got to say, and thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. And Brian.
First of all, I want to thank the organizers, Carroll Chamber, Rick for moderating, and Ashley Schabel and Shannon Landauer. You did a great job under the circumstances, and I appreciate it. I just want to say I'm very grateful to Iowans or the people within the district that have lended me their support during the last 6 years as your state representative. I found this district to be absolutely the best that anybody could ever ask for. Democrats, Republicans, and independents. We all treat each other with respect, and I've felt like I've been treated with respect, and I hope you feel the same. One thing we all agree on is that we had to use every device available to keep Western Iowa, rural Western Iowa, part of the game, part of the plan in the state of Iowa. And so I promise to keep this in mind. If you would vote for me, I'd be honored to be a representative and torchbearer. And I just want to say, God bless America, God bless the great state of Iowa, and thank you and good night.
Thank you very much. Craig Williams, CJ Peterson, our candidates for District 6 Senate. Brian Best, our candidate for District 12 State Representative. I appreciate all of your forthcoming nature of the questions, answers to questions that we gave you. And again, as I did with the other candidates for office, I encourage anyone to reach out to these candidates to discuss further any issues that you may have that you feel should come before the legislature. You may have questions about issues that we didn't discuss here tonight, or you may have follow-up questions for the candidates yourselves. You've heard at least one of them, maybe two, repeat where you can get a hold of them online, but all three of them you can get a hold of, and I encourage you to do that if you have a specific issue. Thank you very much. I've appreciated the ability to moderate here tonight. Shannon?
Yeah, thank you to Rick and our candidates. First of all, I want to thank all of you that joined us online, whether you were tuning in at the TV station, the radio, online, with the YouTube channel, or will again be following in Daily Times Herald. We appreciate that you're getting informed. We do want to thank Rick and Hubert again for helping us to put on this event. And thanks to the candidates, those of you in the room now and those who have made their exit due to our COVID guidelines. Above all, I appreciate your kindness and respect for each other through this process. That's not always the way it's handled, but you gave us your political views as well as letting everyone see you as people too that live within these districts. And so for that, we very much are thankful. All of you that submitted questions in advance, again, we appreciate you taking that time to reach out and all of our media partners, again, that are taking time, not just tonight, but to educate those within the district to help make informed decisions when it's time to vote. The city of Carroll hosted tonight for us. As all of you know, we definitely were given a little bit different situation due to COVID, and this wonderful facility and room here at the city of Carroll really was a huge part in us being able to still hold an event. I know a lot of communities aren't getting to do that right now, so thanks to the team at the city. And finally, our Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee. Those members are John Brocklesby, Hubert Hageman, Rick Hunsaker, Joel Lundstrom, Trish Roberts, Ed Smith, Kathy Steffes, and Mike Pogge Weaver. This committee not only works on this specific event, but throughout legislative session, we host legislative forums to let people come in and ask questions. And again, if we didn't get to your question, please reach out to these candidates. They're all wonderful people that really are well-intentioned for our community's benefit. And I'll close with Tuesday, November 3rd being our voting date, but between now and then, definitely keep an eye on local media for everything you need to know on voting sites, how to get your ballots, and do absentee voting. Be a part of the process, educate yourselves and be informed, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.